Hi and welcome. I see we have people joining us, so we're going to wait just a moment to make sure everyone has a chance to get into the webinar before we get started. I'm Lisa and I'm with San Diego Law Library, and with me is Ramesses Surban, who's going to be speaking today from the San Diego County Independent Redistricting Commission. And I just see my colleague Valerie just posted in the chat box a link that you can use if you want to access a copy of the slides that are going to be shown today. For any reason you decide you need those later, or you weren't able to use the link for some reason, you can always reach out to the library and we can make sure you get a copy of them. Well, we're so glad to have everyone with us today to talk about this really important topic. I know as we were talking about chit-chatting before we got started today, I know there's a lot of confusion out there about redistricting because we have so many different redistricting processes going on at one time in California right now after the census, statewide, county, and city of San Diego. And I believe some of our smaller cities in the county also may be doing redistricting now that some of them are broken up into districts for their city council representation. So lots of potential confusion, but we're here today to talk about San Diego County. And if you are living in San Diego County, this is really important. And so thank you again for joining us. So a couple of housekeeping things. We are going to have a link for a short survey that you will see when you leave the session today. We'd so much appreciate it if you would take a moment or two to fill that out for us and give us feedback. We do appreciate and respond to feedback that we receive as far as our programming that we do at the library. And also, if you have questions, you are welcome to ask them today and take advantage of this opportunity to ask a direct question to someone who is on the County Redistricting Commission this year. You can use the Q&A box that you'll see on your screen for posting those questions. And one nice thing about the Q&A and why we ask you to use that in particular for posting questions is you can post those questions either under your name or anonymously. It's your choice, whatever you are comfortable with. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker. This is Ramesses Surban from the San Diego County Independent Redistricting Commission, taking time out today to help us understand this very important process. He is, as stated, a member of the current San Diego County Independent Redistricting Commission. His background includes being an urban planner for over 10 years, and he's currently working to enforce fair housing laws in his current employment. Other community involvement that he has had before serving on the Redistricting Commission includes the Rancho Peñasquitos Town Council and the Rancho Peñasquitos Planning Board. And he is a proud San Diegan graduate of UCSD and California Western Law School. So with that, I'm going to disappear and turn it over to Ramesses.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Foster, for such a generous introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Ramesses Surban. I am a housing and civil rights attorney with a nonprofit law firm during my day job, but for our purposes today, I also serve as a commissioner on the County of San Diego Independent Redistricting Commission, which you will often hear me refer to from here on out as the IRC, Independent Redistricting Commission. So thank you to the library. Thank you, Ms. Foster, for inviting me to speak to all of you today about the redistricting process in the County of San Diego. I'd like to point out first that since this is an informational event and not a public hearing, I am unable to take any public input today on maps, district boundaries, or communities of interest. The IRC does want your input on these issues, and I will provide information later in my presentation for how you can provide that input. As for the IRC itself, we are an independent commission of 14 citizen volunteers, 8 selected at random from a pool of 60, with 6 more selected by those 8. We are representative of the county's diverse ethnic, racial, cultural, and political composition. We operate completely independently from the influence of our elected officials, and we are responsible only to you, the public, in our duty to draw fair and accurate maps for the county. I want to again thank the San Diego Library, especially Ms. Lisa Foster, for her work in organizing this event. And of course, a special thank you to all of you for your interest in the IRC's work. I hope you'll learn a lot from this presentation and will consider providing the IRC with feedback on our current draft maps. With that, I'll get us started. There we go. So here's what we'll be covering today. I will begin with a brief presentation as you see on screen, which will include first, what is redistricting? And then who are the Independent Redistricting Commission? And what do we do? And then third, I'll tell you why redistricting matters and why it's important. Fourth, I will review current draft maps and mapping directives. And finally, we'll tell you how you can participate, because as you will find out, your participation is very important to us. So, what is redistricting in San Diego County? Let me tell you, redistricting is the process of redrawing district boundaries for each of our 5 county supervisorial districts so that each district has a reasonably equal population. We redraw new boundaries every 10 years based on census data. As you know, our federal government conducts a census every 10 years when it counts all individuals residing in the United States at the location where they live. The census data reveals what population changes have occurred over the past 10 years, and there are usually quite a few changes. Growth in some areas, declines in others, for example. So we redistrict or draw new district boundaries to rebalance the districts for fairness and equal representation. Here are the specific criteria the IRC is required by law to use. The criteria are listed in order of priority in which they must be applied. And as you can see on the right here, we have a changing graphic that shows how the county supervisorial district lines changed over the decades. So that's what you're looking at. And again, the criteria that we apply in drawing our district maps in order. First, the districts must be of reasonably equal population. This rule is required by the United States Constitution. Second, we must create a map that complies with the Federal Voting Rights Act to ensure that minorities have a fair opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. Third, districts must be contiguous so that all parts of the district are connected to each other. Fourth, districts must minimize the division of cities, neighborhoods, and communities of interest to the extent possible. Fifth, districts should be geographically compact such that nearby areas of population are not bypassed for more distant populations. This requirement refers to density, not shape. And then in addition, the IRC cannot consider the place of residence of any incumbent or political candidate in the creation of a map, nor can we draw districts for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent political candidate or political party. The changing map on the right reflects the changes in our county's district boundaries from 1991 through 2011. There are additional criteria that apply only to San Diego County. 3 of the 5 districts must include unincorporated areas. 2 of these districts must be comprised predominantly of unincorporated areas. As a point of reference, the County of San Diego includes 18 incorporated cities, mostly in the western part of the county, as you can see on this map. But much of the county is unincorporated territory, land outside the boundaries of the 18 incorporated cities. So why does redistricting matter? Well, the redistricting matters because how maps are drawn and how communities and neighborhoods get grouped together or separated can affect whose voices are heard on election day for the next decade. Redistricting done properly ensures that communities have a fair opportunity to elect a representative of their choice. In the IRC's case, we will draw new district boundaries for the 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, which is the governing body of the County of San Diego. The Board of Supervisors are responsible for making decisions about how the county's budget gets allocated. This slide shows the county's budget for the current fiscal year and a small sample of the responsibilities of the board. County supervisors make decisions about these things that affect you. So your ability to have a fair chance at electing a supervisor who represents you is why redistricting is so important. Just take a look at that number in the upper right, over $7 billion. How will the commission gather information to redraw new boundaries? It comes primarily from 2 sources. First, we have 2020 census data obtained from the 2020 census count. We will provide a quick peek at some numbers from the census in a moment. Second, we use public input, information we gather from the public to help us learn about and understand communities of interest. What are communities of interest? A community of interest, or COI for short, is a contiguous population that shares common social or economic interests that should be grouped together within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. Communities of interest are not defined by their relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. A COI might be defined by a common culture or a common language, but there are many other ways to define a COI. A neighborhood that is adjacent to a shipping port could identify itself as a COI because it shares common interests pertaining to dealing with the impacts or effects of having a shipping port as a neighbor. For example, information about COIs come from the public, from people telling the IRC about their COI. The census data will give us some information about neighborhoods and communities, but it won't necessarily tell us about issues and concerns that bring a community together. Here are some questions to help you identify and define your COI. Does your neighborhood share certain celebrations or traditions, like street festivals or parades? Are there important places where your community gathers, like parks or community centers? What is the history of your community? Other questions you may ask. Are you part of a community who has issues that have not been adequately addressed by your elected representatives? Has your community come together to advocate for important services, better schools, roads, or health centers in your neighborhood? Have you worked for more recognition or support of your community, like having holidays recognized or historical events commemorated? Common issues that you all care about are also COIs. For example, a group of people that wants to reduce crime, increase jobs, have concerns about a particular land use or environmental condition, or increase social services, so long as they're contiguous. Finally, if you feel your COI is currently divided, identifying those obstacles is just as important. Public hearings are expressly offered for the purpose of hearing from the public about their community and especially about COIs. So what are the ways to provide us with public input on your COI? Because I hope you've heard how important your input is to us. Here are the ways you can provide it. You can provide input at a public hearing. The dates and times are on our website, and I'll present them later on in a later slide. You can also provide a written description of your COI using the e-comment function on the IRC website, starting with common physical features like streets, highways, trails, and rivers. You can also email that description to redistricting@sdcounty.ca.gov. You can draw a map and submit it using the Community Builder tool, which I'll tell you more about in a moment. You can also mail a paper map depicting your COI to the IRC office at San Diego County, IRC 1600 Pacific Highway, room 402, San Diego, California, 92101. And don't worry, I will display that in a later slide if you didn't get it. In all cases, provide as much detail as you can about your community and the characteristics or issues that bind you together and why you should not be separated. The task of the IRC is to redraw the supervisorial district boundaries, and the geographical information you provide is just as important for doing that as defining the common interests the group shares. So let me repeat that. The geographical information you provide is just as important for doing that as defining the common interests the group shares. So please provide us with the geographical information about your community. There are many sources on how best to define your COI, but it is also important to describe your COI geographically so you can draw it on a map, including entities like major streets, highways, and intersections, military bases, shopping malls, schools, hospitals, parks, historic sites, community centers, religious places, social service agencies, and other landmarks will also help define the borders of your COI. You may also want to consider adding the locations of any neighborhood street festivals, parades, or other events. Let's take a moment now to talk about the actual census data, because remember, we are considering both census data and public input regarding your COIs. So, census data. This table shows both 2010 and 2020 census adjusted population totals for the county of San Diego and each of the current 5 supervisorial districts. The ideal population is total population divided by 5. It is the population redistricting tries to achieve for each district. In 2010, the ideal population was 619,063. Due to population growth, that has now increased to 660,452. Percent deviation is magnitude over or under the ideal population for the district divided by ideal population. This is expressed as a percentage of how far a district is from the ideal value. For example, in 2010, District 1's population was under the ideal value by 9,536, which in percentage terms is negative 1.5%. This went to being under by 3.2% in 2020 due to shifting populations. One goal of redistricting is to get these deviations as close to zero as reasonable. A general measure of population balance is overall range, defined as largest minus smallest deviation. Defined as the largest minus the smallest deviation. So by definition, the 2010 districts do have reasonably equal populations with overall range of 2.7%. And we calculate that by getting the 1.2 minus negative 1.5. So as expected, changes have occurred over the last 10 years, such that districts now are more out of balance, with the overall range increasing to 5% in 2020. This table shows the population changes behind the increased overall range for 2020. The overall county growth rate from 2010 to 2020 is 6.7%, with all districts also experiencing positive growth. But you will note that District 3 grew fastest at 8.8%, and so had increased deviation for 2020. District 1 grew slowest at 4.9% and actually went from negative deviation of 1.5% in 2010 to a negative deviation of 3.2% in 2020. So let me talk a little more about our process. By law, the County of San Diego, IRC, must hold public meetings, which we have regularly scheduled IRC meetings twice monthly, And we must gather public testimony through public hearings before and after we draft maps so that we can learn about the community and especially about communities of interest. Then we must also draw draft maps and conduct more public hearings on the draft maps. And lastly, after we've gone through a public, transparent process, we will adopt the final map that will be used for County Board of Supervisors elections for the next decade. On October 21st, the IRC was presented the first set of draft maps. These draft maps can be found on the IRC website, and members of the public are encouraged to provide comments and feedback regarding the maps. On November 1st, the IRC hosted the first draft map public hearing, in which our demographer presented the draft maps that incorporate feedback received at the October 21st meeting. We have since met again on November 13th, and we will again meet today at 5 p.m. This revision process will continue until the IRC adopts the final maps on December 9th. Oh, and excuse me, we will be meeting again on December 2nd and very likely on December 3rd as well. I'll have another slide that shows this, so not to worry if, to give you a summary of the upcoming meetings. So let me talk about the draft maps that are to be considered at tonight's meeting. The next 3 slides are the second set of revised draft maps that were considered at the last special meeting of the IRC this Saturday on November 13th. At this meeting, the public had an opportunity to comment and provide feedback on the 5 maps presented. IRC commissioners then discussed these maps and public input, leading to motions made on the following 2 maps. This is map 13A. (13B) and 14. I apologize. I misspoke in my prior what I had explained. Let me explain that again. I apologize. So on what happened is on November 13th, the IRC met, and then as a result of that meeting, we provided feedback to our demographers, who then provided us with 3 draft maps as a result of the November 13th meeting. Those draft maps are the maps that I just presented today. These 3 maps will now be the subject of further discussion tonight at tonight's 5 p.m. meeting. So again, draft map 13A, (13B), and 14. And for those of you who had been paying attention to, who have been involved in this process previously, you'll note that maps 13A and 13B were an iteration of the previous map 11, and map 14 is an iteration of what was previously map 10, just for convenience and reference sake. So how do I participate? Members of the public are invited to attend upcoming IRC meetings to provide comments and feedback on the draft maps. Meeting locations and Zoom details can be found on our website, DrawYourCommunitycom. In addition to providing comments at public meetings, members of the public can send emails or e-comments about the draft maps, or they can choose to draw their own map using the tools on our website. Again, DrawYourCommunitycom. There are a variety of tools so that everyone can choose their preferred method of providing feedback. Here, you can see our upcoming IRC meeting and public hearing schedule. two draft map public hearings took place. One on November 1st, excuse me, two draft map public hearings are contemplated. One took place on November 1st, and the second will take place on December 2nd. The public is encouraged to attend the draft map public hearings as well as any of the IRC regular or special meetings at which maps will be presented. For additional details, please visit our website again at DrawYourCommunitycom. And I want to note that we will adopt the final map, or we're planning to adopt the final map for the county to meet the deadline. And the deadline for final map adoption is December 15th. So to note especially is that the IRC will be meeting today at 5 p.m. virtually to discuss again those three maps that I presented earlier. So if any of you are able to, I would highly encourage and welcome you to please join us and provide us with input on those maps tonight at 5 p.m. The link to our virtual meeting will be on our website, DrawYourCommunitycom. So we'd like you to participate and stay involved. If you have questions or comments about anything regarding redistricting, it doesn't have to be about COIs, please contact us. The slide here, where my slide go? The slide here has all our contact information. Any information you seek can be found at our website, including links to the Community Builder tool, FAQs, email requests to subscribe to our newsletter, meeting schedules, agendas, and a lot more. We are in the news as well. This week, the UT, or earlier, the UT carried a couple articles about the IRC. There was a report on the November 1st meeting, as well as a guest op-ed by our chairman on redistricting. And there are many other many other media coverage of the IRC, just generally. So I'm sure if you Google us, you'll find us. But anyway, so this concludes the overview presentation. Thank you again for inviting me to speak. I am now happy to listen to any questions or comments that anyone might have.
We do have a couple of questions right now. One of them, Ramesses, is from Marie, and she's asking, is she able to attend the meetings via Zoom? It's important for those who have health concerns right now, to be able to do that. I did notice when you showed the meeting schedule, some of them said virtual, but not all of them. So can you comment on that?
Yes, certainly. So my understanding is that all of our meetings will be held as a hybrid meeting. So for those meetings that are going to be held physically, then there will be a virtual component to that, in which people can join us that way.
And we also have a really great question from Randy. Hi, Randy. He's asking, can you give us an idea of what were the major sources of contention and how are they reflected in the three maps you showed? I know that's a big question, but to the extent you can. I was also curious because I had a hard time seeing what the differences were.
Oh, sure. So,
in those maps, if you can comment on that.
So I'm hesitant to make a public statement as to how I see what the, kind of summarizing the points of contention. I'm happy to do that during a meeting of the commission, but I don't think this venue is an appropriate place to make that statement. But what I will say is that if you look at the three maps and you see the different alignments of how the three maps imagine the alignments of the 5 supervisor districts, you can see that they're very, very different. And I would say that I am hoping very much that we hear from the communities that are impacted by these differing alignments, because that public input will certainly guide the decision-making process of the IRC.
Are you able to point some of those differences out again? Because it may just
sure. Just some obvious differences. So like you can see, so like an obvious difference between, so 13A and 13B are sort of variations of the same map in that it keeps sort of this, this yellow district on the right. And it moves a little bit more of these central districts, the central areas around a little bit. So as you can see, and like the edge up here on between pink and yellow sort of changes. right? So that's kind of the difference. That's sort of some of the differences between 13A and 13B, but 13A and 13B are sort of variations of the same map. 14 is sort of a kind of a very different, well, not, I mean, it's very different as to how it sort of treats what was once that yellow district on the right in the other maps, right? And then so another obvious change between 13A, 13B, and 14 is sort of the way it treats this this area up here. So if I go back, I mean, what I can say, which is, I mean, I think this is obvious to any observer, is so this green district here is the same between the three. You see, I mean, it's not green in 14, but you know, the boundary of the district remains the same for the most part. So yeah, I would encourage, you know, the community members to take a look, and of course, you know, you're going to probably be most interested in where you live and see how, you know, how where you live kind of changes between the three maps, and you know, let us know where, you know, what communities your community is unified with, connected to. That's what I would really highly encourage people to really contact us. I mean, especially if you can, especially do it by in connection with tonight's meeting, because we will be talking about these maps.
And could you maybe go back to the slide that has information about contacting the commission on it, in case people want to do that? All right, well, any of you who are here, thank you so much again for joining us. It's last call for questions if you have any, and definitely grab that link in the chat box to these slides, or take a snapshot of this if you're interested in following up, looking at the website, contacting the commission, maybe spending some more time looking at the maps and deciding you know, what kind of input you might want to give for your own community.
Yes, please do so. And I think we can drop the slide deck in the chat for people who are interested in receiving a copy of it. That might be the easiest way.
So we do have another question, and Ramesses, I'm not sure if you can answer, and some of these are specific about some of the things people are seeing on the maps. Daniel is asking, how do the communities of interest of El Cajon and La Mesa align with Hillcrest and College? So again, I think that gets into what is the reasoning for the way a certain map looks.
Yeah, that was based on a number of on several pieces of community testimony.
And it sounds like maybe attending further meetings might be a better way to get some insight into that as well. And then similarly, there's a question about why is there a pocket around Encinitas between A and B? I don't know if you understand the question, but.
I don't know if I do.
I mean, I can see in the one that Rancho Santa Fe area looks like it's combined with Encinitas in one and not in the other. I'm not sure if that's the.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. In A, that Rancho Santa Fe area is in one district, and then in B, it's with the other district, correct?
Mm-hmm. But it looks like Encinitas is in the same district. In
both 13A and 13B, correct? Yeah. At least it appears as if the municipality, the boundaries of the municipality are contained within one district. And then, so I will just note that, you know, tonight is not the last time, you know, this is not the last opportunity for the public to be involved. We will be meeting again on December 2nd. on December 2nd. And you know, I would encourage the public to continue to be involved on that date as well. And again, here are the ways to contact us. I'm happy to entertain any other questions if there are any remaining. Otherwise, I think we dropped the slide deck in the chat. And if there are any other further questions that no one's thought of, and you know, you want to reach out to us and ask us those questions, again, we're very, very happy to respond. Here's the you should be seeing now the website, our email address, our phone number, our staff and the Independent Redistricting Commission very, very much welcome and would love to further engage with our community.
Okay, well, it looks like that's all the questions we have, so we will wrap up. If you're here and you're interested, we will be posting the recording of this webinar on our YouTube channel. You should be seeing that up probably by early next week at the San Diego Law Library YouTube channel. And again, you're welcome to grab a link to the slides before we leave here from the chat box, or you can always contact the library or the Redistricting Commission for more information. All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ramesses.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the law library. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, especially to the attendees, and hope to hear from you all soon.